The small, dimly lit house stood at the end of a narrow street, its walls carrying the weight of years, memories, and unspoken pain. Inside, everything seemed still, too still, as if even time hesitated to move forward. But behind that silence, something painful unfolded every night. Amina, a frail old woman in her late 70s, sat quietly on a worn-out chair near the window. Her hands trembled as she held her shawl tightly around her shoulders. The cold wasn't what made her shiver, it was fear. Her son, Khaled, hadn't always been like this. There was a time when he was her pride, her hope, the boy she raised with sleepless nights and endless sacrifices. She remembered how he used to cling to her hand when he was little, how he would say, "Ami, I'll take care of you forever." But life had twisted him in ways she never imagined. Ever since he lost his job and fell into bad habits, anger had become his language. He came home late, often drunk, carrying frustration that turned into cruelty. The moment he stepped through the door that night was no different. The clock struck midnight as the door slammed open. Khaled staggered in, his footsteps uneven, his eyes burning with irritation. "Why is the house dark?" He snapped, throwing his keys across the room. Amina slowly stood up, her voice gentle, almost apologetic. "I was waiting for you. I didn't want to waste electricity." Her words only fueled his anger. "Why is the house dark?" He snapped, throwing his keys across the room. Amina slowly stood up, her voice gentle, almost apologetic. "I was waiting for you. I didn't want to waste electricity." Her words only fueled his anger. "Waiting? For what? To lecture me again?" He shouted, his voice echoing through the small house. "I wasn't." She tried to explain, but her words were cut off. "Enough!" He yelled, slamming his fist against the table. "You're always watching me, judging me. You think I'm useless, don't you?" Amina's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "No, Beta, never. You are everything. I have." But Khaled wasn't listening in a moment of blind rage. He pushed the chair beside him, sending it crashing to the floor. The noise made Amina flinch. Her heart pounded as she stepped back, trying to avoid provoking him further. "I work all day," he began, though he hadn't worked in months. "And I come home to this silence, this suffocating place." "It's your home." She whispered. "Not anymore." He shouted. His words struck deeper than any physical pain ever could. Amina stood frozen, her heart breaking quietly, piece by piece. She didn't defend herself. She never did. Instead, she simply endured. After a few more angry words, Khaled stormed into his room, slamming the door so hard that the walls seemed to shake. Silence returned, but this time, it was heavier. Amina slowly bent down, her fragile body struggling as she picked up the fallen chair. Her hand shook, not just from age, but from the emotional weight she carried every single day. She walked to her small bed, sat down, and stared at the wall. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't want to disturb him. Even after everything, she still worried about him. That was a mother's heart. But something inside her had changed that night. For the first time, the pain didn't just hurt, it spoke. It whispered questions she had avoided for years. Is this what my life has become? Is this what I deserve? She looked around the house, the same house she and her husband had built together. The same walls that once echoed with laughter, now filled with anger. She closed her eyes. Memories flooded her mind, colored as a child, running toward her with open arms, his innocent laughter filling the air. Where had that boy gone? And then, slowly, a realization settled in her heart. Maybe love didn't mean staying silent anymore. Maybe love meant doing something, even if it was painful. Amina wiped her tears and lay down, but sleep didn't come easily. That night, something broke inside her. But with that breaking, something new began to form. A decision. A quiet, powerful decision that would change everything by morning. The first rays of sunlight slipped through the cracked window, gently illuminating Amina's tired face. She hadn't slept much, but her eyes no longer carried just pain. They held something new. Clarity. For years, she had lived each day the same way, quietly, patiently, hoping her son would change. But hope alone had not been enough. This morning felt different. It wasn't just another day. It was the beginning of something she had never dared to do before. She slowly got out of bed, her joints aching, but her heart strangely steady. She performed her morning prayer. Her hands raised not in desperation this time, but in quiet strength. "Give me courage," she whispered. After finishing, she walked into the kitchen and prepared breakfast. Just like she always did. Tea boiled softly, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. But today, there was no fear in her movements. Only calm. Khaled eventually woke up, his head heavy from the previous night. He walked into the kitchen, barely glancing at her. "Tea," he muttered. Amina placed the cup in front of him without a word. He took a sip, then frowned. Too cold. Normally, she would immediately apologize. But this time, she didn't. Instead, she looked at him, not with anger, not with fear, but with a quiet firmness he had never seen before. "Khaled," she said softly. Something in her tone made him pause. "Yes," he replied, slightly confused. "We need to talk." He scoffed. "About what now?" Amina took a deep breath. "About us." He leaned back, irritation creeping in again. "There is no us. It's just you complaining and me trying to live my life." Her heart stung, but she didn't back down. "No," she said gently but firmly. "It's about how we are living, and how we cannot continue like this." He looked at her, surprised. She had never spoken like this before. "I am your mother," she continued, her voice steady. "I raised you with love. I stood by you through everything. But I cannot live in fear anymore." Khaled's expression hardened. "So what are you saying?" Amina swallowed, her hands trembling slightly, but she didn't stop. "I am leaving." The words hung in the air like a sudden storm. Khaled stared at her, shocked. "What?" "I will go to the old community home," she said. "They take care of people like me. I don't want to be a burden anymore, and I don't want you to carry this anger because of me." "That's ridiculous," he snapped. "You think leaving will fix anything." "No," she said softly, "but staying like this is breaking us both." Her words hit something deep inside him, though he didn't show it. "You're overreacting," he said, looking away. "Maybe," she replied, "but I have stayed silent for too long." She walked to her small room and began packing a few belongings, her clothes, some old photographs, and a small box of memories. Each item carried a piece of her life. Each fold of fabric felt like a goodbye. Khaled stood in the doorway, watching her, unsure of what to say. He had never imagined she would actually leave. "You can't just go," he muttered. Amina looked at him, her eyes filled with both love and pain. "I can," she said. "And I must." For the first time, Khaled felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not frustration, but fear. A quiet, unsettling fear that he might lose the one person who had never left his side. The house felt different the moment Amina stepped out. Not quieter, because it had always been quiet, but emptier. Khaled stood alone in the living room, staring at the door she had just closed behind her. For a few seconds, he expected her to walk back in, to say she had forgotten something, or that she had changed her mind. But she didn't, and that silence began to feel heavier than any argument they had ever had. He scoffed, trying to shake off the strange feeling rising in his chest. "She'll be back," he muttered to himself. "She always comes back." But as the hours passed, the house didn't change. No sound of utensils in the kitchen. No soft footsteps. No gentle voice asking if he had eaten. For the first time in years, Khaled noticed how much his mother had been doing for him. Not just physically, but emotionally. He walked into the kitchen. The cup she had served him that morning was still there, untouched after his complaint. He picked it up and stared at it. "Too cold," he had said. He clenched his jaw, suddenly feeling ashamed. The words echoed in his mind, now sounding cruel and unnecessary. He pushed the thought away and walked to his room. But even there, he couldn't escape it. Memories began to surface. Uninvited. Unavoidable. He remembered being a child, sick with fever, and Amina sitting beside him all night, placing a cool cloth on his forehead. He remembered her skipping meals so he could eat. He remembered her smile whenever he succeeded, no matter how small the achievement. And then, he remembered last night. Her trembling hands, her quiet tears, her silence. Something inside him cracked. He sat down on his bed, his head in his hands. What have I done? He whispered. For years, he had blamed life for everything, his failures, his anger, his pain. But now, for the first time, he saw something clearly. He had become the very thing he once feared. A man who hurt the one person who loved him unconditionally. The realization was unbearable. He stood up abruptly and walked through the house again, as if searching for something, or someone. But every room reminded him of her absence. The chair by the window, the neatly folded blanket, the faint scent of her cooking. It was everywhere. And yet, she wasn't. That night, Khaled couldn't sleep. Not because of noise, but because of silence. A silence filled with guilt. The next morning, Khaled woke up with a heaviness in his chest that refused to fade. The house felt colder, lifeless, like something essential had been taken away. For the first time, he didn't feel anger. He felt regret. Deep, consuming regret. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor, replaying everything in his mind, the harsh words, the shouting, the fear in his mother's eyes. I can't leave it like this, he said to himself. Without wasting another moment, he grabbed his jacket and rushed out of the house. He knew exactly where she had gone. The small community home on the outskirts of town. The journey felt longer than usual. Every step carried the weight of his guilt. When he finally arrived, he hesitated at the entrance. His heart pounded as he stood there, unsure if he even deserved to walk inside. But then he thought of her. Alone. Waiting. He took a deep breath and stepped in. The place was simple but peaceful. A few elderly people sat in the garden, chatting quietly or enjoying the sunlight. And then, he saw her. Amina sat on a bench under a tree, her hands resting in her lap. She looked calm, but there was a sadness in her eyes that hadn't fully faded. For a moment, Khaled couldn't move. Seeing her like that, away from home, away from him, hit him harder than anything else ever had. Ami, he called softly. She turned, surprised. Their eyes met. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Khaled walked toward her, his step slow, his heart heavy. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. The words came out before he could stop them. I'm so sorry for everything. Amina looked at him, her expression gentle but cautious. I didn't mean to hurt you, he continued. But I did. Again and again. And I didn't even realize how much pain I was causing. Tears filled his eyes. I was angry at the world. But I took it out on you. The one person who didn't deserve it. Amina's eyes softened. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, he said. But I want to change. I need to change. He knelt beside her, something he had never done before. Please, come home. Amina looked at her son. Her heart filled with emotions she couldn't fully express. For years, she had waited for this moment, not the apology itself, but the realization behind it. She gently placed her hand on his head. Khaled, she said softly, I never stopped loving you. Her words broke whatever walls were left inside him. He lowered his head, tears falling freely now. I know, he whispered. And that's why I feel even worse. Amina took a deep breath. Change is not easy, she said. But it is possible. He nodded. I will try. Every day. She studied his face, the sincerity, the regret, the hope. And for the first time in a long time, she saw a glimpse of the boy she once knew. Then we will try. Together, she said. Khaled looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude. Does that mean you'll come home? He asked. Amina smiled gently. Yes, she said. But this time, it will be a different home. And it was. Because when they returned, something had truly changed. Not the walls, not the furniture, but the hearts inside it. Khaled began to rebuild, not just his life, but his relationship with his mother. He found work, stayed away from harmful habits, and most importantly, learned to control his anger. And Amina. She finally found peace. Not because life had become perfect, but because love had found its way back, stronger, wiser, and more honest than before. And in that small house, once filled with silence and pain, laughter slowly began to return. Because sometimes, it takes losing something to truly understand its value. And sometimes, a single decision can change everything.